What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 57. Today, we got a really awesome guest. Super excited. I woke you up, didn't I? You're awake now. Oh, shit. Today, we got a pretty awesome guest, good friend of mine. Her name is Clair Oatway. How you doing, Claire?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just looking at that picture at the video. It's relatively new, and I was like, that second picture, I look like a baby.
Oh.
No facial hair. I look like a baby.
Ah.
Yeah, right. Pinch my cheeks and feed me food.
Oh, you'd all be in heaven then. Right.
Right, right. Feed me tiramisu, I'll be fine.
Oh.
Right, right. But anyways, Claire is all the way across the pond in England, in Plymouth, the original, the OG Plymouth, not Plymouth Rock, and not the Plymouth the car, but Plymouth, England.
Yeah, home
So
of the gym.
yeah,
Yep.
so how would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself, Miss Claire?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Clair Oatway, and I do a lot of stuff that kind of generally a lot of my professional stuff is around leadership, mentoring, and coaching, and helping businesses to grow, helping them get their head around technology. Um, but as a kind of side hustle, I've been running a podcast for the last 6 months now called Exponential Potential, and we've been going everywhere with it. And that's how we got on, that's how we met, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's how Claire and I met. I was a guest on her show, and she said for the first time ever, I'm speechless on my own show, and I was like, I do that sometimes.
Indeed.
But anyways, I think that was like one of the first episodes that I like that I've appeared on somebody else's, and I'm like, I enjoy what I listen to from my own from my own stuff. I can't stand the sound of my own voice. I don't know. It's weird.
You're in the wrong business.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I know. That's why I don't really listen to what I do, right? I kind of blur out when I'm talking, and I hear what other people are saying.
It's like blow those kisses out to the world. Here you go, have some of this.
Okay, so when I hear my own voice, you remember Charlie Brown, the teacher, the womp 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 womp. That's what I hear. That's exactly how womp 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 womp. Yeah, but uh, so Claire, you have an interesting story. Before we jump into any of the heavier stuff, you have an interesting story about you and your husband. Where did you guys get married?
So we got married in a little place called Malchesney on Lake Garda, in Italy. And oh, crikey, it's about 20 years ago. We got married by the deputy mayor of the village called Giuseppe Serpoloni. And you look at the pictures and it's a 13th century castle. It's like white rock with the mountains in the background and the lake there, which is gorgeous. Um, but the whole ceremony was in Italian, right? So I'm still not sure what I signed up to. But it was a really tiny ceremony. Our folks came over, my brothers were over, my husband's brothers were over, and on the way, my mum ate ice cream on the way to the wedding breakfast in between the ceremony. She then, okay, this is really bad. So my husband's mum married Dave, who's my husband's dad. They got divorced, and then she married another Dave. And so we're kind of at this massive family, celebration, and the waiter's like, "Oh, Dave, Dave." So really confused, it's like, "Dave, Dave, what's going on here?" And so she's blushing away, and then the wine flows because it's in Italy, right? And then the limoncello comes out, so that comes out in
Yeah.
warm glasses, and then my husband challenges my mum to a drinking competition, except he does the pouring of the cups and she can't see. So bless her, she's like,
She's a
not in a good way.
trooper.
And then I saw my mother-in-law's true colors because later that day she actually took a shot of my my poor mum crashed out on a line home somewhere. I was like, oh no.
Nice. That's awesome.
So, so I've got to keep her sweet, otherwise I think she'll put that out on the internet.
She's Dave one and Dave two. Dave one and Dave two. There's a similar situation I've run into. My girlfriend, her dad married a Jen. They got
Yeah.
divorced, which is her mom, and then he ended up dating another Jen, which just so happened to be her best friend. And then they got married and had a kid. So yeah, we call her Jen and one and Jen two.
It's just weird, isn't it? Life's just weird.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's absolutely insane, insane. Um,
Yeah.
but you told me that story, you told me that story because I myself have been to Lake Garda, and it's absolutely beautiful, stunning. And you didn't have a translator saying, "Hey, they're
Well,
telling you to say yes."
it's good. See, well, we had a translator who helped us do all the last minute stuff, and she was like, it's just very emotional. So, because in Italy, you talk with your hands. Well, there's a
Yeah,
terrible stereotype, but there's a
but
lot of
it's
hand
true.
waving.
It's true.
So she's like, it's really sad. It's really sad. But if you want to cry, just think of your cat having a pee in your suitcase. It's just okay. So, yeah,
I
here's a
do like.
tip for anybody in life. If you want to cry, think about your cat peeing in your suitcase and you'll be fine.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Just dishing
Okay,
out the wisdom.
dishing out the wisdom. Wow. Okay. I always thought about, like, if I ever get nervous, think of everybody in their underwear, but that's a good one. That I wouldn't imagine that because it's just weird. But
uh, but the Italians have got some gorgeous wedding vows. So you promise to stay faithful to each other. You promise to live in the same house, and you also promise that uh, no matter what, you'll both contribute to the family in whatever way. So if it's, taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, or bringing in the money, but it's like there's this real sense of togetherness. You're working for the family, working together, and not a I honor you, I obey you, I'm your property.
yeah,
It's actually quite sweet.
and that's how it should be.
Hmm.
Every relationship, it should be that way. It should be, you're working together to create a better home, not, hey, you're mine because you signed a contract.
Because your folks handed over enough chattels and goods.
Right, right. I've
Yeah,
I've got ten goats and 5 cows. Says that my daughter marries you.
yeah.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
No, so yeah, so that's we talked loads about Italy, didn't we?
Yeah,
It's just such a gorgeous place. We
yeah,
keep going back. It's like a second home in a way.
yeah. If I could go back and visit, I would. Um,
Yeah.
Not for the alcohol or any of that, but just to
The
go back and
food's
see
great.
see the sights that I didn't get to see when I was drunk. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know. Sometimes people say that it's better when you're drinking because you discover new things that you never thought you would have seen before. Um, but you can still do that. Well, I can do that sober. I have a
Yeah.
wicked crazy mind, and I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. And then it's like, oh, piece of candy. Oh, that looks cool too. Yeah, but we're not here for me. We're here for you. And so, Claire, you dealt with a bit of burnout. What was it like leading up to that phase of burnout for you?
So this was back in 2020, and to kind of give you a bit of a sense of who I am, uh, I don't come from a great neighborhood, but I got spotted in primary school and then sent to a high school, like at all girls schools, like state funded, and so I've always been like the bright kid, and went to uni, did a law degree, kind of got a job, got promoted, yeah, did really really well. Um, But for me, I always felt that I could handle lots of stress. It's like, oh, rise to the challenge, say yes, work it out later, keep going, keep going, keep going. And there'd been like a lot of pressure over a number of years, and the I put it like a stress dial in a way. And every time something new would come up, just work it away, but not necessarily let the stress go down. Keep going, keep going. And in 2020, I remember going into the office and it was like a fuse had gone off in my head. And it was like, I can't be here. And I left the building. Said, I need some time out. Left the building, went home, sobbed for weeks. And I just look back now and, even though to the outside world I was a high achiever, still nailing it, handling the stress, the one that kind of you take the problems to, sorts it all out, makes it all go. But I was an empty husk on the settee for weeks, then months, really getting better. It's really difficult for some time. And what was tough about it was I look back and I now see that it was like a slow motion car crash, that it was inevitable. Well, I don't know if it was inevitable, but you could see how it was unraveling and unraveling, and then just the amount of damage that was caused in the aftermath is, yeah, it's just really huge.
What were some of the stressors that were just building up over time for you?
Um, so we've been honest about uh, our family situations, and so we adopted a boy at 2.5, and as he was growing, kind of really wanted to help him to understand adoption and his emotions, because he's always been really deep in his emotions, and so we got some family help, some family therapy, and the therapist said, right, well, in order to unlock this for your boy, we need to treat you guys first. So let's start treating you. Okay. So you've been through the fertility process or infertility process. How
Mhm.
was that? Oh, that was stressful. Oh, you've been through the adoption process and being weighed and measured for years. How was that? Oh, it was stressful. Oh, you're in a very stressful line of work. Oh, you've got an emotional abuser ex-boyfriend as well. And so kind of, just picking at all of the things that had been tucked away and buried deep down inside. And that felt like my legs had been taken underneath me because I was left in a really raw and vulnerable place. And, you know, as well as being in a really busy, stressful job, right? And and if you looked from the outside in, I'd gone into this business. It was a GP practice, so it was a merger of practices. We'd grown, we'd made some changes, we'd attracted national attention. So I was talking nationally and internationally about healthcare and technology, and to the outside world, it's like, oh, absolutely crushing it, growing the business, everything else like that. But it was taking a physical toll. It was a really demanding job. Um, some conflicts within the business that were a bit unresolved, but were coming through and kind of starting to come through. So where I've been that high achiever, and everyone's got an inner critic, right? My inner critic had turned into an inner bully. So people didn't need to actually say stuff out loud because I'd fill in the gaps for them and then make it 10 times worse. I'd never feel like I was achieving. I don't have the emotional resilience anymore. And then um, I'd heard that there was another practice manager in the country who'd actually committed suicide. And I didn't know her. I just knew of her through the Facebook group. And I was like, this job's gonna kill you if it doesn't give you a heart attack, if you don't get cancer. It kind of, I wasn't lost in that way, but I was driving around at 85, rushing from here to there, not paying attention, on the phone in my car. So it's just, yeah, so yeah, actually risk some different risky behaviors. And it was just no, I can't do this. Just cannot carry on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's rough.
yeah, yeah. And people around me, the GP partners are like, well, yeah, everything seemed okay. And bear in mind, these are like GPs. It's like
Yeah.
30 GPs that I'd see. But what I'd do would be I'd take problems away, go to the office, deal with them, always ask people how they were, not really engage in conversations about how I was. Just like, no, it's all fine. Work it out. It's all fine. Of course, COVID had hit as well.
Yeah.
And it was just in those first days, it was so chaotic. People didn't have a clue what to do. And um, we were struggling to work out what was going on. And I felt really isolated, even
Yeah.
though it's 200 people who I managed. Just felt lonely, responsible, lost. I was like, no, don't need to be here right
Yeah.
now.
I think that's the best thing that you could have done is take that and say, I can't do this right now. And I,
Uh, mm, um, so I I became a partner,
Mhm.
a non-clinical partner. So it's just like you're not clinical, you're non-clinical. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got an MBA, yeah, you've got 20 years of leadership experience, yeah, you got that, but you're non-clinical. Anyway, it's another story. Um, but I take those responsibilities really to heart. And in terms of registration and regulation, was a named person, so felt responsible for making sure that everybody was safe and knew what was going on. And also in terms of your legal responsibilities as a director in the company, if anything goes on, you're culpable. But not everybody has the same attitude when they rock up to work. And I think for me, I just felt like I was not the only one, but it just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I just felt I couldn't take the responsibility for everybody else on my shoulders anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah,
I can, I can imagine how that feels, and you said something earlier that, where you said, nobody could tell me anything that I wasn't already thinking about myself. And
yeah,
I'm not going to dive into those thoughts because those are very intrusive thoughts, very personal thoughts, and also um, very harsh thoughts. I've been there. I've done that too. I've said some of those things that I really don't believe I should have said to myself or about
yeah.
myself. So we you start you say that, hey, I can't do this, and you go home. What happens after that?
I think everybody was um, pretty much in shock around me. So I remember a conversation I'd had with my husband, and he'd said something along the lines of, "Oh, suck it up. Everybody hates their job." And that was like the last straw. I was like, "No, I don't have to." And actually, kind of the missing piece for me is your permission for me to not have to suck it up, to not have to be the one anymore. Um, and he'd given that, and that was the right. That's it. I'm calling in sick. So getting the breathing space from the GP just for 2 weeks, and Plymouth, even though there's like 250,000 people here, it's like a village. And because I'd worked with another family doctor, kind of my family doctor understood the stresses that I was under and all of the work among the practices. And so he'd actually said, I'm not going to sign you off for 2 weeks, because 2 weeks isn't going to touch it. 4 weeks you're off for, go home. Because you're not that you're not safe, but kind of when you're in that position of responsibility, you need to be making safe decisions for everybody else that's around you. And he could see that I just hadn't taken care of myself or my well-being at all. Um, so so we had the time out. Luckily, my husband and I had a few days away together because the boy was on a school residential. So we managed to just be together in this little cottage in the cliffs in nature. And I look back at the photos and I look like I'm 60. It's just nothing to me, just bags under my eyes, feeling really knackered. But that space was just really gorgeous. And then over time, some counselling that had been provided by the practice, but also for me, what was really shifting was spending time back with myself. So this room that we're in, actually was really cathartic. I live in like a 1920s, Victorian house. So it's cold, it's damp, it's got holes in the walls. It needs a lot of love. And in this room, kind of the plaster had blown in a few places. So just spending time stripping back the plaster by hand, just back, filling it, painting the room, painting the shelving. And I had Oprah Winfrey on repeat on like YouTube. And I've always found her really, she's always quite spiritual but quite positive and quite uplifting. But she had some great guests, and so over the weeks, it wasn't like weeks, it was more like kind of a week, 10 days. It was like a personal ashram with Oprah here. While I'm like standing down, I got this calm space. But it really, that's when I started exploring spirituality. And as a teenager, I'd always been like a crystal girl, or interested in the supernatural, interested in spirituality, interested in the concepts of like Reiki, and kind of over that summer, I started to explore that even further. And it was some really, really helpful little exercises that brought me out, that encouraged me to connect back into myself rather than connect everywhere else. Uh, yeah, and just incredible. So if I give you an example, I've started to explore Reiki, which is the concept of energy and sharing love. And there's I had I don't know why, but I had like a childhood photo of myself. And kind of like one of the exercises have been, look at that child, look at how gorgeous and fun loving, and reconnect to that that person, because that person is you essentially. So I'm kind of looking at that photo, and just really sending her sending her healing, sending her love, and just feeling deeply moved, just like, okay, it's like, I see you, I'm here for you, you're here for me, we're together, and making some of those connections, just incredible. And then another one, when you talk about that inner critic, and this was a tough one, and it's one that I don't always share with people that I work with, but it's so powerful, which is to, when no one else is in the house, look in the mirror, look into your eyes in the mirror, look into your eyes as if you're looking into the eyes of a new love or a new child, and just just explore, just make that connection back in the mirror. And it's tough at first. It's really tough because it's like you look at the crow's feet, or you look at the grey hair, or you look at all these bits and bobs. But actually, when you get over all that bullshit, you kind of go, ah, it's it's you. It's you, and you start to kind of have that empathy for yourself, and you remember that you're there when you've been rushing around getting everything else done for everybody else and have nothing left for yourself. So yeah,
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. And this all happened in the right at the beginning of COVID too. And
yeah,
so that had to be a little bit extra tough too, because you're going from a way of life where things are just normal, right? Just as abnormal as they were, that was normal. And then we get shifted into this new normal of you can't be within 6 feet of people. You can't leave your house. If you're leaving your house, you got to wear a mask, right? You can't gather in a certain amount of group of people. And it just, I mean, I'm pretty sure you
yeah.
worked through the pandemic, with people, but like that became the new normal, and I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
was really hard.
Well, it meant I wasn't able to see people. They weren't able to come. I wasn't able to hug people. Even my parents and my dad's in his 70s now,
Yeah,
and they were scared. And then the schools closed, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I'm just starting to have a little bit of peace, and then my boy's home, and then he doesn't want to do any homework, and then and then
yeah,
like many families, just like that. For um, and my husband's office just up the road, half a mile away, so he'd be kind of going to work every day, and yeah, it's in this melting pot at home, and luckily, because at one point, luckily the school reached out because he's adopted, so they said, he's allowed to come back into school to give him a sense of normal.
yeah,
It's as much about him as it is about you guys. Do you want
yeah,
it? And he jumped at the chance, and yeah, actually, that was that was pretty amazing. But it was such a weird a weird time. But in a way, because I was cocooned, I could almost observe it and see the mass, almost collective grief that was going on around the world, where people were just being pushed from one identity to another identity. And kind of you could you could feel that sense of loss coming through in like anger, frustration, fear. It was there, almost like if you have a situation where you're shifted from here to here, you go through it at an individual level, kind of the change curve. But for the whole world to go through it at the same time and at different paces. So in a way, the timing sucked, but the timing was perfect because I didn't have to I didn't have to take care of 200 people and their families, or even the 42,000 people that were on the books that needed our care.
yeah, yeah,
It was just boom.
yeah. And you know, I know for me it was I grew accustomed to being okay not being around people, because I secretly didn't like people at that time in my life. So I became okay with being alone, and that kind of like ushered in the feeling of like I don't need to be around people to be all right, and that's okay. But for a job like you where you have to be around people, that I can imagine like how stressful that can be, but then how relieving that can be, because you're like not so many voices I can
Not so
think.
many dramas.
Yeah, not so much trauma. I'm just I'm here with myself being present.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So when you dived in, when you got to that point and you dived into your spirituality, what what was it initially like for you when you got to that point where you said, I want to explore these things?
Um, so that's, that is a really good question. Really good. So, so what it was like was it felt like, so with Reiki, right? With
Mm,
Reiki, the idea is that kind of everybody has this universal energy flowing through them that helps to heal your your body and helps that to grow. Um, and I joined Mind Valley, yeah, as a global brand now, and started to learn some of those concepts, which was so helpful because I'd come to realize that you don't have to go through pain to heal. And so where the therapist had brought things through, I'd been left really raw and really vulnerable. And I'm not, not angry about that now, but it's just like I was. Um, but you feel like you're stuck with salt in a wound that's that's there.
mm,
Whereas some of the elements of spirituality, some of the elements of energy work are not necessarily exploring these things in detail, but acknowledging them, sending love, and letting them go. And then you know, finding all of the gifts that are around us, like in the garden or in the local park or, where I live near the beach. And I've always felt quite calm by the sea, but you realize that that's all around. And I'd I'd just become really disconnected from that. I'd get up, get to school, get to work, always work late, sometimes work 14-hour days, and get home without much of a break and just like, oh, having taken on everyone else's crap. Um, and so it was, it felt like coming back to myself and also coming back to a connection that's always been there and always supported me. And I think I'd said when I was a teenager, this was an area that I've been really interested in. And there was a guy, you're saying about adventures that you have when you're drunk. I'm always somebody who has adventures because I chat to people. So I used to hang out with bikers and kind of like go camping randomly, or meet hippies on the bus to different places. And there's a particular hippie that I met, and he'd said, look for the weeds that grow up in the cracks of the pavements, because those little weeds are telling you that the world is big, the world is there, the world is love you, and the world nature will find a way of breaking through no matter what. And and kind of when you have that balance, and when you also think about time in a different through a different lens. So this things feel really raw right now, but when you expand that to, are we going to look at this in the year? When we look back, was this moment going to be a moment that defines our year? If you look at it over a lifetime, if you look at it much longer, it's just a tiny, tiny, tiny speck, and it'll pass
yeah.
because it does.
Mhm.
And and that brought so much peace. Has brought so much peace. Yeah, and then since then, as well as the spirituality, I've been exploring a lot around a lot deeper coaching techniques, understanding saboteurs, understanding, kind of stories that you can bring to the table that really help people to connect to their instinct, their intuition, to understand their resilience, to take care of themselves as well, even when they're taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, but
Sounds a lot like, that connection you were talking about sounds a lot like being present in the moment and being mindful, right? Um, I before I went on this journey, and I've changed it from being, this life journey, or this journey, because that's what it is. It's a journey. It's like the Odyssey. Okay. Um, I didn't understand the concept of being present and being mindful, and then when I experienced it for the first time, that mindfulness and being present, oh my God, I have never felt anything like that before, and haven't felt anything that great since, right? Because it's weird. Like I can feel the a sound impact my body, and I can feel, just everything that is meant to happen in this universe happening, and energy's flowing through you, and transferring out, and it's just this amazing feeling. For anybody listening and you haven't felt that shit, it's the best feeling in the world. And I'm pretty sure you could agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you see, so there's a particular book that I'd recommend to you called it's called Positive Intelligence, and it's from a guy called Shizad Shamin. And he did a factor analysis of neuroscience, cognitive psychology, positive psychology, and success coaching. And they distilled that down and they said, look, there's three core concepts.
Uh-huh.
One is that we all have different saboteurs. So we all have different inner voices. I'm and kind of is a really good it's a really good tool. If you look at PQ saboteurs through Google or whatever
Mhm.
search engine you use, you'll find it. Um, but my saboteurs, for example, I'm high achiever, which means yeah, I am Clair Oatway, BA Law Hons, MBA, Fellow of the Institute of Leadership and Management, Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and member of the Institute of Directors. So I'm really good at collecting acronyms.
Yeah.
But the secret is I'm not so good at going, yeah, well done, well done. So the only way I find it is by pushing, 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 pushing. I'm also a controller, which is freaking awesome if you want to get stuff done, because I'll always get stuff done. Um, and I'll always, when you have like a group of adults and
Mhm.
nobody leads, nobody makes a decision, I can't stand it. So I'll always push people along and we'll have a hell of a time. And I'm also restless, which means I'm sweet, shiny object, shiny object, shiny object.
Yeah.
And they're strengths that have just gone rogue. They've gone a bit too far, but they kind of put a ceiling on how happy and successful you can be. You can be super successful with them, but not necessarily happy and successful. So you have these saboteurs. You have these sage behaviors, which are around empathy and action and curiosity. And these are really healthy behaviors too. And then you have what he calls PQ reps. And these PQ reps are 10, 20 seconds of mindfulness that you put in throughout your day that have such an impact on how you're thinking. So let me go back to the saboteurs a second. The saboteurs come about because of your neural pathways. And so these are strengths, and they get faster because they learn how to keep you safe, they learn how to kind of activate rewards. So you keep doing them, and they must become automatic decisions
Mhm.
because it's just how you go. You get everything gets done around you, and so on. And so over time, they become thicker and thicker pathways because they don't
Mhm.
get disrupted. But one of the things that the PQ reps do is that they start to stop them, and then you can choose which way you go. And it may go the same way as as the controller wants you to
Yeah.
go, but it's where you want to go. And that's being able to intercept at that point is a total game changer. So do you want to play a game around mindfulness? Come.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, right. So the best way to disrupt those neural pathways is through sensory hacks.
Yeah.
So there's three of my favorite ones. I'm going to take off my watch because it's easiest. One of my favorite ones is you take the fingertips from one hand and you lightly stroke down the fingertips and palm of your other hand, really, really slowly, but pay enough attention to be able to feel the ridges and sensations on both fingertips.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, okay, I'm here.
Tickles.
Yeah. First. The other one is another one, is using your sight.
Hmm.
So if you're having a heated discussion with somebody, have a look at their eyebrow
Hmm.
and notice the color of their eyebrow hairs, the thickness, the curliness, anything about them. Just focus in on there for 10 seconds and then come back to the conversation. The other person, you've kept eye contact with them, so they don't necessarily know that you've zoned out.
Yeah.
But actually, you calm the fuck down and
Yeah.
you're, all right, what are you trying to say? Okay, here. Another one is around hearing, and this is one that you've mentioned around the sensation of feeling sound. But if you just pause and then tune in to the furthest away sound you can hear. So right now there's a car that's just gone past my window.
Hmm. Hmm.
Tune into the closest sound you can hear.
Hmm.
And because I've got these on, I can hear my heartbeat in my ear.
That's awesome.
It's just like, whoa. And then, yeah, just listen to your breathing. And dude, you're in charge of your brain now.
That's
Congratulations.
that's awesome. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Not gonna lie. I'm gonna have to practice those. Like no joke.
they're really good. They're really
I
good.
used to, you were talking about the hand sensory thing, and I used to take my hands and you go like
Mm.
lightly tap them like this, and it felt like if you do that long enough, like lightly do that, it feels like there's a piece of plexiglass in between them,
Ah, no,
or
see,
like a
that's a Reiki
wall.
move. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can stretch that to be a ball, almost like a beach
Hmm.
ball,
Yeah.
and just push it and push it and push it and
Mm.
make it really strong. And then, um, so that's level one Reiki. Then you can send that wherever you want. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to send it out to everybody in the audience. There you go. You can have it.
I used to do
But
that
yeah.
when I would meditate. I didn't understand the concept like what it was, but before I met with somebody that actually does like specialized meditation, my palms would get on fire, literally just right here. And I was like, what is happening? But like I could feel like this heat transference between my hands, and like the ball would get that big. And I was like, this is crazy. And I like go like this at somebody and they'd start to sweat. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Am I a sorcerer? I've got magic, right? I
Yeah,
know what
but
it is
hang
now.
on. Well, it is.
It's the chi.
And actually, it's the chi, which is the source. So you technically are a sorcerer
I am
because
a
you are
sorcerer.
commanding source.
I am a. I am a. I knew it. I knew it, Claire. We got to come up with a brilliant name for me, uh, but we can come at that at a later time. Okay. So you get to this point where you start doing the self discovery, and you start stepping into Reiki and some more spiritual things. Um, what did you learn about that situation with your burnout that was new to you, but now you look back and you're like, I see the tape unraveling. What were some of those things?
Um, so some of the things are actually around the bullshit rules that we're born into. Um, and so in a way, I grew up in a family where my mum worked several jobs, so you worked really hard. Kind of they worked my mum and dad worked shift work and different times, and I take care of my brothers. So I'd always grown up to know that, you had to work hard to money. You had to work hard. You had to please boss to go far. And so one of the things that I learned is that some of those rules don't necessarily serve you. They don't necessarily help you to thrive, help you to be the best person you could be. They're like somebody else's rules. And particularly in corporate environments, yeah, kind of some of the ways that culture's put together,
Mm.
and some of the power dynamics do lead to people suffering,
Yeah.
and do lead to people really pushing themselves. And I think in a way that's why the timing was spot on, because I think there are so many people who have seen COVID and looked around them and gone, well, not quite, is that all it is? It's like, oh
Mm.
my God. Have I been asleep? Have I been sleepwalking in this life?
Mhm.
You know, and I think there's a lot of people that took that chance to say, you know what, maybe there's different terms I can live my life by. So definitely around, you know, the fact that often the rules have been driving who you are and how you show up, and that you have the power to choose different rules, or
Mhm.
to seek different rules. Um, at the time, I yeah, I'd been reading loads of different books, and one of them was like around money blocks and getting over those. And said, "Oh, yeah, I've even done a past life regression." That's so fine. I'll give that a go. So gave it a go. I found a hypnotist in Edinburgh, on the phone, and tried it, and he took me back to. It's going to sound really freaky for a lot of your guests or a lot of your listeners, but he took me back to a life called Jim, who's in the US.
Hmm.
And one of, you know, kind of this past life of Jim, who'd done really well, who'd brought up his family, who was working in like a high rise. Um, and he had a heart attack at his desk and died. And you know, whether that's real or whether that's my subconscious being in a place where it can describe its fears, I just felt so scared and was sobbing, and it was just like, that's what it is. Fuck.
Yeah.
Boom. Um, and so there's been something in it around as well for me, which is like, let play with different concepts. If they don't make sense, just play with them and see how they fit, because you will learn something about yourself and about the world that you're in.
Mm.
Yeah, that's probably one of the other aspects. I think one thing too is around the importance of honesty in the relationships that you're in. And sometimes you want to be the good daughter or good wife or good mum, but it means that you're not always open and honest about how you're suffering or asking for help. And I'd, even though I was always good at helping other people, I didn't ask for help. I
Mm.
didn't want anybody to see that I needed help, that I was struggling with my mental health. So I kind of kept them all at bay, which meant that I was more and more isolated. Um, and so now I try to have those conversations earlier. Don't always succeed,
We're not
but
all perfect.
no, hallelujah. Because that'd be boring and too safe, to
Yeah,
be honest.
definitely.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I know that hypnotist. I may know that hypnotist that you're talking about.
No way. That's
I
really cool.
I know a few over in the UK, so it might be one. It might be somebody you know, somebody you don't. I don't know.
Eh,
Offline, we're gonna have to talk about that. But
yeah,
uh, those are some really good realizations, right? That those rules and the that people have made up for us in the past, we don't really have to abide by, right? Because they don't fit our guideline, and it's not like rules versus laws, but it's more along the rules that humans have created, like the role, like the law of
yeah,
role, Like, you have to go to, you graduate high school or primary school, and you go to college, you go to university, and then you get a good paying job, or you get a low paying job, and then work your way up to the high paying job. Who says you have to do that?
Yeah.
That's what society has told us.
Yeah.
I think that's bullshit. I think it is.
Well, and it's sometimes rules that have been in place for 200, 300 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's 8 billion people on this planet. There's kind of every different combination of personality and lifestyle. And yeah, we get to choose that. And when you let go of the judgment of yourself and other people of their rules, it's like, yes, you do you. What do you mean? It's
Mhm.
all cool. It's
Absolutely.
fine.
Yep.
It's
Absolutely.
so freeing. Hmm.
I agree. I agree. So, Claire, before we go, what advice or suggestions would you give to people that are facing burnout, or they're currently in their burnout phase? What would you give to them?
So the first thing is the first thing is it's definitely not your fault. Everything you're facing right now is not your fault. You're taking it on your shoulders. You don't need to. And it's also not as big as you think it is. That's hard to hear. It's really hard to hear. But everything is cranked up because you're so sensitive at the moment. Get some rest and write. The best therapy you can give yourself right now, and I'm not a therapist, shouldn't say that, but the best thing you can do is write, because what that does is it helps all of those thoughts to come out. And when they come out, they're not spinning around in your head. They're not in your head at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you can choose whether or not they're true, but just get them out. If you can, speak to people around you. They love you and they want to help you. So let them help you. And yeah, if you need more medical help, then don't be afraid of that. And get you out of your suffering sooner.
Some good suggestions and advice. Spoken like somebody who's been through it. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Well, Claire, where can we find the podcast Exponential Potential? Oh no. She might have frozen up. Anyways, Claire is the host or co-host of Exponential Potential on YouTube and on Spotify. And you can find all her episodes under Exponential Potential on YouTube and Spotify. The links will be in the description down below. And Claire's a good friend of mine. Super awesome lady. Really, really inspirational. So, yep, looks like we just lost her, guys. So, anyways, till next time, we will see you later. And I hope that you guys have a very good day. And much love.